Well, welcome again today to the Property Management Life podcast. I'm your host, Eric Weatherington, here with your co host, Greg Deering. And today we want to talk about disaster preparedness in your property management company. Here we are sitting at the end of September, and we have our first hurricane of the season bearing down on the southeast part of the country. And Greg, I know you're in Texas, I'm in South Carolina. So hurricanes, tornadoes, and other things that create problems for us in property management are certainly part of our everyday life, aren't they, Greg?
Yes, they are. It's just part of where we live. It's always going to be something, no matter where you live, and you just have to be prepared for it in this business.
And Greg, what have you guys found in your company are some things that you guys can do to stay prepared and to make sure that you're ready when the unforeseeable thing happens?
Well, it's been interesting. We've had some preparedness, instituted in the business, but when COVID came, it really pushed us to start checking some of this, where we had everybody working from home, for instance. That was the first thing, and that was a big thing. With my background at Federal Express, I've always looked at worst case scenarios, and then my father was in the insurance business, so we always looked at what ifs. And having a good plan and communicating with the staff is the best thing to start the entire process, we have found.
Yeah, communication, having a plan, first of all, let's talk about that, because having a
Yeah.
plan is really what I've come to realize is most critical. I mean, I remember the first hurricane that came through, and we were managing, 500-600 doors, and we just kind of dealt with it on the fly. And one of the things that I never foresaw was how many owners were calling us up. Hey, do you know a hurricane's coming? Well, yeah, we do know. We live here. We know that a hurricane's coming. And and then have you boarded up all the windows and doors? And have you done this? And have you done that? And we got so many calls from owners, right up leading up to the storm, and even the first day or two after the storm. We were like, we're on the phone so much with the owners asking questions that we don't have time to do the work, which is get out and check on their properties and take care of the tenants. And that's because we didn't really have a clear, concise, direct communication plan about what was going to happen, what we were doing, how we were working, and whatnot. Did you guys have similar experience at GDAA?
We have, and just through the years with minor things happening, it could be a power outage or tornado. A little less planning goes into a tornado. It's more reacting because you don't have anything coming. But when recently, or the last 2 years, we've had a tremendous ice storm that happened for 12 days,
Right.
below 32 degrees. But just through the years, we've learned the first thing is communication, and like you said, let's communicate with the owners so they stop calling in. And so we always are real good with communicating with owners, basically saying, if you don't hear anything, it's because everything's okay. We're going to go check them out, and we'll notify you on a case by case. And it was very helpful because that's probably reduced 80-90% of the incoming calls and allowed us to do our job.
One of the most important things we did in our procedure manual for dealing with disasters was in those emails that we send out to owners. We told them, do not call our office. And you think, oh my goodness, but we marketed, we dressed it up with a bow tie. We said, do not call our office, because we want our team free to be able to take the emergency calls from your tenants. And
Yes,
so we dressed it up
yes.
with a bow tie, but we communicate out to the owners multiple times before, up to a storm, and immediately after a storm, just saying, please do not call us. We are talking to your tenants. We're making sure they're safe. We're making sure that your properties are protected. We're out in the field. We will call you when we have information or we need your assistance, and then we follow up later on and communicate with them, of course.
Yes, yeah, I think that's just such a key, being proactive on it, at least for some of the owners that may or may not be as hands-on, that it might be the first time they realize what something's going on, and it gives them reassurance that we are on top of it. We know this is happening, and we're going to take actions proactively to make sure this entire event goes as smooth as possible.
And it was a huge difference when we started communicating to the owners in that way. Do not call us. Here's why. Here's what we're doing. it just totally changed our ability to be able to deal with the situation. So, and
Mhm.
unfortunately, we've had a lot of practice over the last 10 years, 12 years of dealing with hurricanes and storms and floods and everything else. So, but that was one of the key things, telling those owners, don't call us. We're
Yep.
out working. We'll call you.
Yep. No, it's exactly right. And then then you take that to how much you're going to communicate with the tenants ahead of time.
Yep.
So when we knew it's obviously if it's a tornado, we can't be proactive, but
Right.
on a hurricane, we can start sending out tips and
Right.
get the lawn furniture in, make sure uh, make sure you have drinking water in case anything happens. But it's very helpful to help them, and sometimes we forget our staff not our staff, our residents are very busy with their own lives.
Yep.
And so sometimes and I don't understand this, but they don't even know something's coming until we
Right.
tell them.
Right.
So I think we've done a good service to tell them to get out there and get some water, cover the things, and make sure minor things, batteries, and we will be checking on them also. And they appreciate that. They seem to really value that and appreciate it.
Totally agree. It's surprising how many residents don't have the time to stay up to date on what's going on with the weather forecast or
Right.
anything like that. And so you end up saying, right, get batteries, get water. Don't, in South Carolina, don't board your windows and doors. We don't want you damaging the property. We don't,
Right.
don't do that. But, and we just tell them what the expectation is. Move in all your outside furniture, secure everything you can secure, and then, keep your family safe. And then
Yep.
what we did, and this has again been super well received, Greg, is on the back end of the storm. On the back end of the storm, we broke our tenant list down into groups, and everybody on the team comes in immediately after the storm, and we have a script, and we call every single tenant. And the script goes something like this: "Hi, it's Eric from New Heights Property Management. I'm just calling to check and make sure everybody in your family is okay." And then there's a little filler phrase, and then and oh, by the way, if there's any damage at your property and you need to report that to us, please send us an email to stormdamage@newheightspm.com.
Right.
We have a special email set up to receive all of those emails. And I tell you, first of all, it made our staff feel really good because they were calling to check up on people.
That's right.
Secondly, I can't tell you how many phone calls and voicemails we got back from the tenants saying, "Hey, thank you for calling and checking up on us. Everybody's fine." And that was really a heartwarming exercise. And so we started that, I don't know, 3 or 4 storms ago, and and have just continued that process over the years. And our residents really, really appreciated, hey, they're calling to check up on me and my family.
Right. I think you and I discussed that 3 or 4 years ago, and we implemented it in our office immediately after. And again, tremendous dividends to the tenants, residents, tremendous dividends to our own staff. But it's there's a crisis going on, and it's nice to know on both ends that people care about others. And that came across when we started making those calls per your suggestion.
So I had one good idea, huh?
You did.
Finally. Whew, finally I had a good idea.
That's good. That
So,
was good.
The other thing of
Go ahead.
that is that email. I mean, having that
Yeah.
storm damage email account set up
Mhm.
where they're not emailing a property manager or an assistant property manager or somebody else. They're emailing storm damage at yourcompany.com, and
Yep.
that really helped us be able to monitor and manage the influx of work that came in. I mean, we had one storm back, I think it was 6 years ago now. We had 24 inches of rain in 2 days, and we opened up 423 work orders in the first 24 hours after that storm passed.
That's
And-
almost unmanageable.
And it wouldn't have been if we hadn't had all of these systems in place and
Right.
had a clear policy and procedure manual of what we were doing, how we were going to do it. Everything came to one email box. we
Yeah.
had everybody knew what their role was, and I mean, it really amazingly went very, very well, you know, with the team and with the residents and whatnot.
Well, it allows you to prioritize also, because obviously
Right.
some of that damage was much more critical than others.
Right.
Um, and you know what we have found in the past, that when we've acknowledged when a tenant does call in and say we've heard you, they fully understand that some of their damage is less a priority, and they
Right.
just want to get on the record. So when we call them back, they're going, "Oh, come out whenever. We understand things are going on." It is a huge dividend to pay. It is huge.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
you know, and I mean, I remember we'd get a few calls. You know, a few weeks into it, we'd get a call. And, hey, a panel in our fence blew down, and so we have to take the dog out on the leash. And when is that fence going to be fixed? And you know, and in a friendly banter, like, well, would you like us to fix the roof on your neighbor's house first, or would you like us to come fix your fence first?
Right.
And okay, we get it, understand, take
Yeah.
care of the roof, and we and so sometimes right, in a situation like this where there's a disaster, whether it's anticipated like a hurricane, or it's a tornado, or an ice storm that's not necessarily anticipated, people understand if you communicate, if you're there, if you answer the phone, if you talk to them, if you let them know, hey, we know it's a pain for you to take your dog out on a leash. We understand that. We get that. We appreciate that. But because you're doing that, you're allowing us to make sure that 5 other families can have a home to sleep in tonight because they don't have a roof.
That's right. That's right. No, that's a key thing. And if you look at these events, we can't control them. We can't stop hurricanes. We can't control it, but we can control the communication. You can
Right.
control the communication on the front end, during, and on the back end. That's the controllable aspect of this. So it's pretty inexcusable when a tenant does call in, a resident calls in, and they don't get a response for 4 or 5 days, and someone says, "Well, we're in the middle of a storm." You can always get back. You can still tell them, "We're not going to touch this for 10 days, but we've heard you and we acknowledge it. And we're going to address this."
Well, and again, and because we're in hurricane prone area in South Carolina, so we set up all of our systems in the office. We were completely paperless. We set up all of our systems in the office so that anywhere, as long as there was an internet connection, we could work.
Yep.
And so one of the things that I would always do in advance of a storm is I would send one person would be the point person. And if, let's say, the storm was coming up from the Atlantic and going to hit South Carolina, I would send somebody to Atlanta and say, you go to Atlanta, you stay there, and you don't come home until I tell you it's okay.
Right.
And so we knew one person was going to be where they had a laptop, a phone, internet access, and they could be the hub of communication when we had major power outages, cell phone tower outages, all of those things. And if the storm was coming up from Florida, from the Gulf Coast and that way, then I would send somebody, north. And we would have that person go. We would tell them to, stay there and be ready to work, but you're not coming back until I tell you
we get on the other
okay,
side.
come back.
Sure.
Right. Because we need one person who can be the hub of activity and the hub of communication.
Yep.
And, and then, the other thing that we did too is we had a policy with our team that, okay, first of all, family first. We always wanted to make sure everybody's family is safe.
Yes.
And no individual is worth, a roof on a house or a window or a door or any of that kind of stuff. That stuff can all be replaced. People's lives can't. So when we have mandatory evacuation orders, then people were allowed to evacuate. I mean, if they wanted to evacuate, then they evacuated.
Sure.
But what we did is we had a policy that said within 24 hours of the governor or whoever lifting the evacuation order, you are expected to report to work. And, so that people didn't just end up evacuating and be on vacation. Now I'm on vacation for, for the next, week or 2 weeks or whatever that is. But, because I tell you what, property managers earn their keep in times of crisis. And,
They do.
you think about someone managing their own house and they live in Ohio or Michigan or California or across the country or across the world even, and they have a house in Charleston, South Carolina, and a hurricane comes through.
Right.
What are they going to do? I mean, they're not going to be able to do much of anything.
No, they're not.
But we're here, boots on the ground, and so we'd get our staff back in town as quickly and as safely as possible, and then just everybody's all hands on deck 7 days a week, go out and work and just get it done.
It's interesting you said that you were sending people out of town. We have relationships with some of our friends, and we know if something really went down bad. Everyone knows what office to go to up north, and everyone knows which office, if they had to, go to down south. Other than working in a house, and we have that relationship also with those partners in those cities. If anything happens in your area, come here. But that's already been discussed, and that's the key, I think, is having these discussions ahead of time.
Absolutely. I mean, I even had one of, Warren Sloan Realty, a good friend of mine.
Good friend of ours.
He and I would, we would actually share, we actually created Google Maps that had all of our properties on it and pinned together so that, and we would split the area up and say, okay, if we had a major storm,
right,
and I was sending a property manager over to Westcott Plantation, well, they're already in the subdivision. They can drive by my houses and drive by Warren's houses at the same time.
Absolutely.
And we actually would, as a part of our pre-storm planning, we would share all the addresses of our properties together into a map like that and split up the area so that if it was major, that we could help each other in that way. And it's just critical to have friends and be prepared for
Absolutely.
those types of eventualities.
Absolutely. The other thing we've done that we found, again, when we knew something was coming, was contact all our vendors.
Yeah.
And set a plan in place with them, make sure, and we've got a couple of small vendors that we work with that are starting out. So if we weren't sure what was happening, we might help them get some supplies ahead of time to stock up on. But we wanted to know who was working and who we could count on. Obviously, in the midst of the storm, some of them are having their effects on their personal houses or business. But we had instructed them, as soon as this is over, you get with us and tell us if you're available or not. And if you're not available, this won't affect your long-term business relationship with us. But we wanted to know who's out there, because you have to triage these as you go. A fence down versus a roof is two different things.
So now so we've talked about, and that absolutely right, Greg, absolutely right. Getting those vendors lined up and knowing who you can count on ahead of time is important. And now let's go to the next phase, which is how do we deal with it after the fact? We talked a little bit about calling each tenant and the importance of doing those check-ins and making sure that everybody's okay. The next thing that again I learned, if I'm doing it backwards, the first time or two, is the vacant properties are really become your most important asset.
That's right.
And it's maybe a little bit counterintuitive until you realize that people need a place to live. There's going to be a lot of people displaced because of a storm, and they need a place to live. So, and there's no tenant at those vacant properties calling you to give you an update.
That's correct.
So the faster you can get your team out to those vacant properties and determine which of the vacant properties are move-in ready still, then all of a sudden now you become a part of the solution to providing housing for people who need to be displaced, who are displaced by the storm.
Yes.
And so that became that, again, by doing it wrong the first time or two, it became a priority to get out to those vacant houses. And now we've got, okay, this vacant house is move-in ready. Okay, this one's move-in ready still. This one's move-in ready. Oh, this one's got some damage. Quick, get over there, fix that so that can be move-in. And we were then able to have a tenant go from one place to another very quickly, or have those properties rented to others, tenants that weren't in our portfolio already, because we got those vacant properties, rent ready, just within a day or two after that storm coming through.
Yeah, and that is such a key aspect. I think people overlook that because they're going to the other properties first,
Right.
realizing some of these are damaged. Our friend Pete Newbig down in Houston, when they went through that hurricane, the last hurricane, I think it was Ike, uh, he did such a wonderful job. They went out and did exactly what you were talking about. They checked their vacant properties, and then he started advertising it to his fellow property managers in Houston. If
Yep.
you have tenants and you don't have enough vacancies, here's what we have available. We've already talked to our owners. We can work something out. And it was a great service that the property management community came together, and it was all by Pete and I think Pete and Steve were doing it at that time. They did a
Yep.
great job and served a lot of people. So
Yeah.
you're right.
It's housing is important, and anytime it's great to see the community come together, and the property management community, the community at large, come together and help each other and help people when they're going through these times of disaster and these times of unexpected loss
Hmm.
and everything else. I mean, that's it's about taking care of each other and helping each other, and
It is.
and that works out well.
It is.
What other tips or tricks do you have up your sleeve from dealing with disasters?
Well, from my years at Federal Express, and when that I remember my first promotion, my boss called me and said the next day, or he called me the next day after I got the job, and he says, "Okay, your plane crashed. What are you going to do?" I go, "What?" He goes, "I need a book written up, a plan, have it to me in 7 days," and hung up. And it really put me into a mode of thinking that way. But so I might be jumping ahead here, but I think one of the things that's very important that people overlook is once you get past this, of having a meeting with your staff afterwards and said, what went right? What went wrong? What can we do better next time? You don't wait 6 months or 2 years for the next potential thing to happen. If you do it, within the first couple of weeks, once you get past the majority of this and you have a handle on it, it's fresh in your memory and it creates good dialogue. And every time we've done something like that, we've learned something for the next time.
Greg,
and that's
so
a critical
often,
piece.
so often people write a policy manual or a procedure manual, but they don't have a policy or a procedure to keep the manual updated.
Right.
And then the next
Right.
thing you know, somebody new came in and they got trained a little different way, and they got trained a little different way, and the next thing you know, you're 5 steps removed from actually following the policy because nobody's updating the policy. And
Exactly.
so that's a great step. I mean, you and again, at our company, the procedure manual is laid out, day 3 before the storm, day 2 before the storm, day 1, day 0, day 1 after, day 2 after, day 3 after.
Yep.
And it's all laid out in great detail with all of the messages already pre-typed and all of the communications already preset.
Mhm.
But if you don't take time afterwards, like you say, to sit down and say, okay, what worked, what didn't work, where do we need to tweak the policy or update the policy to reflect current practices of the day, then
Right.
yeah, pretty soon you find out that the policy and procedure manual is so outdated that it's not any good anymore.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And no one can predict the severity or the intensity or the area of that particular storm. So
Right.
what worked the last time could be totally irrelevant. And an example would be when we had about 7 years ago, we had 3 counties in Texas freeze for 3 or 4 days. This last one, we had 254 counties freeze for
Wow.
7 days. And that changes the dynamics of who can get where, what parts can be delivered. I mean, accessibility. It really changed the dynamics of how we handled it this last time. So,
Yeah. No, and as with anything, I mean, as you go through these things, you gain experience, you learn, you hopefully grow and hopefully get better. But the thing that I would say to anybody out there is, prepare ahead of time. Think about the messaging that you're going to communicate with your owners. Think about the messaging you're going to communicate with your tenants. Think about how you're going to take care of the people that you have to take care of, and have a plan. Have some kind of a plan.
yeah, right. Right. That's my number one thing is that anybody watching right now is don't think you have to master build this thing. Just start with a plan. I think you had a key point there of just start, and you'll build on it as you go. And the longer you're in the business, unfortunately, we know we're going to deal with this. It's just Mother Nature, and you build on it every time. but you learn and talk to others, because I've learned so much just from talking to you and other people in our community, property management community, that have really helped me put our manual together and maybe systemize it a little better.
Yeah, no, it's great, to have our friends in NARPM and friends in the property management community to lean on to help. It's a great thing, and it's certainly been a big help to me and to our company and our business. So,
Yeah.
great. Well, folks, we hope you've enjoyed the information that we've shared today about being prepared for disasters and storms. Hit that like button, subscribe to our podcast, so that ring that notification bell so that you get notified when we put out a new episode. And hope you have a great rest of your day. Greg, great talking to you. Great spending time with you as always. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
That sounds great. Thank you, Eric. Have a good one. Bye.